What's up everyone, it is Chimpso here, bringing you the second part of my Singe guide. Yes, I know, and I'm sorry this has taken so long, but honestly, I'm glad I put it off. So much has changed in the last couple of months. Singe is in my opinion one of the most difficult champions in the game to build, simply due to the sheer amount of items that can work on him. Arguing on builds is the most common argument us Singe players have. Half of us will look at a Singe build and say it's complete trash, and they wouldn't even use it on a bronze smurf, while the other half will look at it and swear that it got them to diamond. With the AP item changes that went live on patch 5.13, this debate is raging as strong as ever. While I was originally going to make this video a detailed breakdown of every item that can be built on Singe, there's just way too many of them and they're still changing. I decided to instead look at the many different build paths for Singe, their strengths and weaknesses, and when you should use what build. So let's get started. While the different Singe builds out there often vary dramatically, there is one thing that they all include, and that is the boots. On Singe there are really only 3 viable boot options to choose from, and deciding which one is right for your game is not too hard at all. The first and most common boot upgrade you'll be building on Singe is obviously Mercury Treads. Singe has no gap closing abilities, which means that CC is very effective at putting him down. Merc Treads will provide you with the tenacity required to charge at the enemy team and run around laughing and flipping like a maniac. Obviously, you want to build these when the enemy has a lot of hard CC that can be countered with tenacity, so you almost always want to get these if the enemy team has a Morgana or a Leona. Rushing them in lane against heavy CC and AP top laners, such as Lysandra, is also incredibly effective. If the enemy does not have a lot of hard CC, or they only have knockups which tenacity doesn't help you with, then you should probably consider one of the other boot options instead. The second option is of course Ninja Tabi. You want to grab these when the enemy team does not have a lot of hard CC, but has quite a bit of AD or auto attack based champions. Enemy team is Riven, Kayle, Caitlyn, Yasuo and Leona. You probably want to go Ninja Tabi despite the CC threat from Leona. The reduced damage from auto attacks that Ninja Tabi provides is indispensable in matchups like these. Additionally, the armor it provides also helps you a great deal during the laning phase against both enemy minions, if you're proxying, and enemy champions, as even AP range top laners do a lot of their damage against you with auto attacks early on. The third, and my personal favourite boot option on Singed, is Boots of Swiftness. Now when I say my personal favourite, I don't mean that they're the ones I build most of the time. Matter of fact, I rarely build these, and neither should you. They're just so much damn fun though. They provide you the most movement speed out of all 3 of the boot options, and reduce the effectiveness of enemy slows. You should only get these boots in the following scenarios. If the enemy team has a lot of slows, for example if they have Nunu and Lulu, then these boots will save your ass more times than you can count. Additionally, if the enemy team does not have a huge amount of hard CC and lacks any sufficient AD threat, for example their ADC is getting shit stomped, then you can also feel free to grab these. They really are the best boot option if you don't need to shore up your weaknesses with the other builds. Now let's get on to the builds for Singed. The first we'll be taking a look at is the Rod of Ages build. This build is almost as old as Singe himself, and involves rushing Catalyst into Rod of Ages, and then Rylais. After this, you'll either go straight for Liandry's Torment, to take advantage of its synergy with Rylais, or build 1 or 2 tank items before doing so, depending on how fed you are and the enemy team. If the enemy team is not very tanky, you may consider skipping Liandry's entirely and going for a 3rd tank item instead. There are lots of options to choose from when it comes to said tank items. If you need armor, you have the choice between Randuin's Omen, which is good if the enemy team has a little bit of AP that you still need to itemize against despite the armor focus of the item. You have Frozen Heart, which provides you with a massive amount of armor and gives you some mana while slowing enemy attack speed. Finally, we have Thought-Mail, which combines a huge amount of armor with a kick-ass passive against hyper-fed enemy AD carries and AD bruisers. For magic resist items, we have the obvious Banshee's Veil or Spirit Visage choice. However, I believe that Banshee's Veil is the best item in almost every circumstance. Sure, Singe has quite a bit of health regeneration with Zult running, but he's no Garen or Mundo. Banshee's Spell Shield is almost always a better passive than Spirit Visage's healing increase. These are the 2 greedy MR items, but maybe you want to be a bit more team focused, in which case you can grab either Locket of the Iron Solari or Banner of Command. Both of these items provide magic resist for both you and your teammates, as well as 10% cooldown reduction, but their other stats do vary. Ask yourself, do you want to be super tanky? Go for Locket. It provides more HP and a shield for you and your team. Want to be tanky but still want to do some damage? Go for Banner of Command. It'll give you less HP, but a hefty sum of AP, as well as the ability to promote a minion, aiding in your split pushing. Remember, the promoted minion is immune to magic damage, so building against heavy AP teams can yield some pretty hilarious results. Look at Vlad trying to kill the minion.
Well, your name's just... Is he trying to kill the thing? He's just sitting there all on Okay, I love this item now, just because of that.
Now, I'll be honest with you here. With the 5.13 change to AP items, I don't like building Rod of Ages on Singed. Rod of Ages was changed to provide less HP early game, but more mana and AP later on. This is actually very significant for Singed, as Rod of Ages provides 150 less HP overall. That is a ruby crystal worth of HP. That's 400 gold. This really hurts you early on. Singed doesn't need the extra mana that Rod of Ages provides. What it gave before was plenty, and sure, the extra AP is nice, but not good enough to justify the loss of HP early on. Sure, you can use this build and still do work with it, no doubt, but it's not as good as it once was. Our next build, on the other hand, is just as good as it was in the past, if not better considering the AP buffs to Archangel Staff in patch 5.13. Yep, it's a Tear of the Goddess Singed build. This is exactly the same as the Rod of Ages build, except you use Tear, then build into Rylais, Liandry's, and tank items. This makes you a tiny bit weaker early on as you don't have the health and passive from Callous and Protector, but it allows you to rush Rylais much faster. At the moment, Rod of Ages costs 2,700 gold, Tear costs 720. That means you get a 2,000 gold head start on your Rylais Crystal Scepter, which due to the patch 5.13, is much more powerful on Singed than it was in the past. It's downright mandatory on him now. With Rod of Ages being worse on Singed and Rylais being stronger, there's really no reason to go for the Rod of Ages build now instead of the Tear build. You're slightly weaker early, sure, but your Rylais and Liandry's power spike comes so much sooner. Now some of you might be asking, what about going both Tear and Rod of Ages? Do not do this. As you'll see from the next build I'll be talking about, Singed can survive without any mana items at all. You simply don't need all this mana. Sure, you get more HP from his passive, but why get that when you can just build health and resistances instead? Tear ROA Singed completely gimps your mid game and puts all your stock into late game. Singed is most powerful in mid game teamfights and skirmishes. Sure, this build will give you a great late game with all that AP and shield from Seraph's Embrace, but you won't have a mid game at all. There's simply no reason to build both Tear and Rod of Ages on Singed. It is entirely unnecessary. Now we're onto the Singed build of the hour, the Doran's Ring into Rylais build. This has been a hugely popular Singed build with the pros, as it gives Singed so much more early game killing power. If you play Singed with Ignite, you have to go this build if you want to kill any competent opponent in lane. But don't worry, this build is still amazingly good on Teleport Singed as well. The strength of this build is that, like the Tear build, you can get your Rylais very fast. This build involves building 1 or 2, though usually 2, Doran's Rings as your first items. These will provide Singed with ability power to help his early game pushing and damage, health to stay alive, as well as mana regen from both the stats and passives of the rings. And remember, the Doran's Rings passives do stack with each other. The downside of this build is the lack of a mana item, but don't fret. Singed is more than capable of operating with just his base mana, you just need to be a little better at managing it. Of course, you will eventually end up selling these Doran's Rings, but they'll do their job early and allow you to get that sweet Rylais earlier on. The main strength of this build over the Tear build is the early AP that you get from those Doran's Rings, which make a huge difference in lane. Give this build a try and see what you think. It really is a different laning experience compared to the ROA or Tear builds. Now we're onto a build that I cooked up after getting sick of the ribbons and Nars played against me top, and that's the Sunfire Cape build. This is a build that combines the damage and tankiness of Sunfire Cape to give you some early game damage while still being tanky against heavy AD tops. This build involves rushing Balmy Cinder, then either going for Rylais next, getting the Sunfire after, or simply rushing Sunfire into Rylais. This build has several weaknesses of course. Early game it provides you with no AP. While you still get the proximity damage from Balmy Cinder, your Poison and Fling are not going to do as much damage. The strength of this build are obvious, the early armor. If you're facing an AD top and AD jungler, this is certainly a viable build, especially if they're melee and will have to sit in your Sunfire's proximity range to damage you. Once again, after Rylais, it's Liandry's into tank or vice versa. Try this build out next time you're against an AD jungler and top. It really works pretty damn well against them. The last build we'll be looking at today is the full tank Singed build. This build is a complete deviation from the other Singed builds in that it involves very little or no AP. This build involves simply building whatever tank items you need for the situation, and I've already gone over pretty much all the tank items that you can build on Singed and when you should build them, so you can mix and match from there. Believe it or not, this build is actually pretty damn good because it literally makes you unkillable. My advice is to get quite a bit of cooldown reduction with this build. Go for a Frozen Heart, and go for either Locket or the Banner of Command. This will give you 30% CDR, and will allow you to be much more efficient in flinging and pulling. Remember that this build is focused on utility, not damage. You want to be in those team fights, not split pushing. This build is a peel focused build. You're more of a team player, you need to protect your team and not die for the carries as much. But believe it or not, it still does work. In my opinion, it's not as effective as AP Singed, but it still definitely works, and anyone who tells you otherwise is retarded. Sorry, but it does work. Once again, just keep in mind the primary weakness of this build. You do no damage, and that really, really, really sucks sometimes. But you're unkillable, and you're a goddamn peel threat. This build relies on your ability to land goo flips, which you can do much more often due to the cooldown reduction. So make sure that you master this before trying to do this build. So there we have it, guys. There are my builds for Singed, or the builds that I know of for Singed that people do use. Sorry this took so long to create once again, but I'm glad it did. Lots changed, especially with patch 5.13. So many different items are good for Singed now, so many different items are bad for Singed now. Things have changed, but Singed still has a lot of items that are very good on him, and it makes him a very difficult champion to build. I want to end this video with a few honourable mentions. First of all, Zhonya's Hourglass. This is a good hybrid AP and armor item that you can get in certain situations. It's actually pretty damn good. Now that it costs less and provides less AP, it's actually a bit better to build, since before the biggest obstacle was its price. Why go for that when you can go for a Thornmail, which costs much less, or a Frozen Heart, which costs much less? Costs much less. Sorry, this part is unscripted, as you can probably tell. The second part, second item, is Righteous Glory. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, why the fuck isn't this item in my main builds? Well, simply because it got nerfed. They just straight up nerfed the damn item. They changed its cooldown from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, and they reduced the amount of health it gave by 200. That's a gigantic nerf. That item is just not good anymore. Like, what the fuck were they thinking? So yeah, there's just so many more better options to get on Singed now than Righteous Glory. But yeah, those are my two honourable mentions. There are obviously some other items, like, you know, Luden's Echo, that some people build. I don't personally build these items. I don't like them. They can work, but in my opinion, obviously, only if you're very fed. And there are some items that, of course, that are just downright stupid, like Death Cap. You know, the only time you ever want to get Death Cap, guys, is if you're, like, legendary at 10 minutes. Then I can understand Death Cap, but any other time, no. But I wanted to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Looking forward to making the next part of the guide. Hopefully it doesn't take as long, though I know I did say that the last guide I made. But yeah, if you haven't watched the first part of my Singed guide, please go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. It's about all the various Singed techniques that you can use, that you need to know how to use if you want to play Singed effectively. Apart from that, please subscribe if you like the video. I make regular Singed content as well as just League content in general. And follow me on Twitter to get video updates and all that. Twitter.com/Chimpso. I'll put that in the description too. Hoping to become more active on there, so please follow me, check it out there. But yeah, once again, I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you on the next video. Hopefully some more Singed next. But good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day. I'm sorry, G-Bay. Please don't hunt me down.